Hello, and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Curtis Estes with me. Curtis is a over 30-year-long financial advisor. He's authored over 5 different books, one of them being a very impactful book for me called Your Life by Design. If you're watching today, we've got that here. If you're listening, I'll encourage you to go check it out. And one of his newest ventures is looking into longevity and a long, healthy, fruitful life. And so I'm really excited to highlight Curtis's story because what I think you're going to hear is when you can find what you do best and what you have the most passion in, it leads to the best results. So, Curtis, thanks so much for being on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. So to begin your journey, you grew up in Kansas, and when you were about 11 years old, you had a very impactful and tragic incident happen. So talk a little about the early years for you growing up in Kansas, work ethic, but also on that side of life.
Yeah, we grew up in a small town in northeast Kansas, Atchison, farming community. We grew up on a farm, raised pigs, sold them at the county fair, and everything was great until on Christmas Day, when I was 11 years old, we were in Kansas City, and we got a call saying your house is on fire. And so we sped back from Kansas City to Atchison, and the house was literally burned to the ground. And so we lost everything, and we didn't have any fire insurance. So we moved from a great house into a trailer house, and that financial impact was kind of the straw that broke the back of my parents' marriage. So they got divorced, and just led to significant financial strain all through high school. There was a time when me, my mom, and my sister were all working together at McDonald's, and that was a who knew in the moment experience for sure.
Absolutely. So when you reflect on that, I think, those early years can be really formative in our work ethic. One, either in what we see, and but two, in regards to how we are asked to provide or, supplement there. So talk a little about those early years in work ethic while this is going on in your family's dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot from my mom because my dad wasn't around a lot. And so for much of that time, she had 2 or even 3 different jobs, from literally cleaning houses to she ended up getting her nursing degree and worked at a drug rehab facility in Atchison after, the several years where the three of us were working side by side at McDonald's. And so I saw an incredible work ethic in my mother who was just committed to making sure that, we had what we needed. And then starting out, as soon as I could get a job at McDonald's, I was behind the counter flipping burgers and up at 4:30 in the morning to get the McDonald's opened. And so the ability to learn the value of hard work early on, while in the time wasn't something I was super excited about, really has served me extraordinarily well in my professional career.
Absolutely. Now, growing up in Kansas, KU Rock Chalk is a big deal, and you like to go there for university and school. And while you're there, you're studying journalism, and you and some friends decide, hey, maybe we should start a publishing company. So, talk a little about getting into journalism and that entrepreneurial bug, even from a early on stage.
Yeah, so I would always been really into goal setting because during those many hours flipping burgers at McDonald's, I knew that if I continued to work hard, opportunities would present themselves. And so I thought how cool it would be, to one day have my own business. And so leveraging the goal setting, we thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a life planner for fellow KU students? So we created an academic planner that had all the school events listed on the days that they took place, which is irrelevant in today's digital world. But back then, we all had printed calendars, and so I spent a summer in Washington D.C. After my sophomore year, and met some guys from Los Angeles who went to UCLA. And so he said, well, gosh, if we can do this in Kansas, what if we tried it nationally? And so I spent the following spring break driving 2,000 miles across the eastern half of the United States, and we got our academic planner into Penn State and Michigan State universities. And so I was able to spend the next summer before my senior year in Los Angeles. And a summer in Los Angeles was pretty appealing to a kid from an itty bitty town in Kansas. And so in my senior year, I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I knew it probably wasn't going to be publishing because we really weren't making any money. But I went to an entrepreneurs conference at KU, and there was a young guy who loved what he did. And after he talked, I went up to him and I said, I think I could be good at this, but I don't have any money. Is that a problem? And he said, no. And I said, I'd like to do this in Los Angeles, where I spent last summer. Is that a problem? And he said, no. And so literally 7 days after graduating from KU, I moved to Los Angeles, got there on a Saturday, and a Jewish friend had recommended Bel Air Presbyterian Church. So I went to Bel Air Press on Sunday, and I started financial planning practice with Northwestern Mutual on Monday, and I've been doing the same thing every week for 34 years.
I love it. Now, hearing that, anyone that has started a business, certainly in a service-based business, knows the power of relationships is paramount. So to go somewhere where you don't have a bunch of strong connections just adds another level of difficulty. Talk about those early days of getting started where the network isn't robust, you're young, meaning, you don't have a ton of probably amazing connections that are in high position places and companies. So talk about getting started with a business from the ground up.
So I moved to Los Angeles, and I knew like less than 10 people, and I was the sixth person living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And because someone was already sleeping in the closet, I slept on the couch on the patio outside, and starting my financial planning practice, knowing nobody was very, very difficult. And so there were plenty of days when all my prospects came from the Yellow Pages, and I was cold calling. And the good news is, as with most businesses, if you just work really, really hard, things, ultimately work out okay. And so the first 3 years were quite difficult, but then I started getting some traction, and by the 5th year, things were going better, and I had hope, and it just kind of taken off from there.
Yeah. Now, along the way, the person running your office introduces you to Maury. And talk a little about your relationship and the power of having a coach and someone that pushes you, maybe beyond what you think is possible because they see something in you.
Well, I can't speak highly enough about the importance of having mentors and coaches in our lives, and you're referring to Maury Sheckman, who had really had a significant impact across the country with Northwestern Mutual Advisors. But when I was asked to meet with him, I had no idea who he was. And so I walked into this meeting with this, gentleman from Chicago, and he says, tell me about yourself. Tell me about, why you moved to Los Angeles. And I shared, how excited I was to be in LA, and the people and the weather and the opportunity, and how hard I was working. And I assumed he was just going to say, wow, you're such an impressive young man, you're going to have an amazing future here. But Maury instead said, hey, can I give you some feedback? And I said, sure. And he said, you didn't come from Kansas to Los Angeles for the weather or anything else. You fled from Kansas because you've got absolutely no grasp on reality, and you probably would have committed suicide had you stayed in Los Angeles or stayed in Kansas. So here's a guy just saying, like, you're thinking this, but here's the truth. And it was a real wake-up call for me that helped me to understand that we do need those people to tell us, the hard truths, because I was living in a bit of a, false sense of reality, because there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't dealt with from my childhood, from my parents' divorce, the fire, and all that stuff. And so he just helped me grapple with a lot of those issues. And I give a ton of credit to Bob Kerrigan, who led our office at the time. And he was that person who believed in me more than I believed in myself most days. And it was his conviction about what was possible that carried me through. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to both Maury and Bob.
Now, in your business practice, continuing to, I guess, be goal focused and have coaches was really important to you and has been a critical part. But one day you were going to the gym and a friend showed up to the gym as well, and you thought, man, you might have your shirt on inside out or backwards. So talk a little bit about what happened and the meaning that had for you and how you've incorporated that into your life.
For sure. So a buddy of mine who was in this lifetime growth program with me called Strategic Coach was always kind of next level in terms of his goal setting practices. And so one day he shows up at the gym and he literally looks like he's wearing a workout shirt that's on backwards, inside out. And I said, dude, what's up with your shirt? And he said, oh, it's my goals printed in reverse, so that when I'm standing in front of the mirror, I can read them for myself. And I said, that's genius. I love that idea of having, your own personal motivational billboard on your workout shirt. And so Phil Tyrone inspired me to create my own version. And so for the past, 30 years, all of my workout shirts have all of my goals printed in reverse. And every time I wear them outside, people are saying, dude, your shirt's on backwards or inside out. I said, nope, it's just my goals printed in reverse as a reminder for me. So it's a really fun conversation topic, especially for anyone else who's as passionate about creating a bigger vision for their future as we are.
Yes. Now, the first time that I had the opportunity to meet you, I was 20 years old, and you were speaking at an event, and you unbuttoned your shirt. After asking folks, you said, who here has goals? And we all raise our hands, and you go, all right, well, let's say it. And very few people could actually articulate the goal, right? We had goals. And you started to unbutton your shirt, and you go, these are my goals. And there was a shirt, as you said, where, hey, if I were looking in a mirror, I could read that to myself. Now, in that same interaction, you asked a very profound question, and you said, who here can name any of their great-grandparents, and who here has met their great-grandparents? And what I realized that day was I was 0 for 8. I couldn't name a single one, and I hadn't met a single one. And for you, that was a very pivotal realization in your own life. So talk a little bit about, where that idea came from and, really what driving force it's been for you in your life.
For sure. So I was at a speech when I was younger, and the gentleman on stage said, how many of your great-grandparents can you name? And I couldn't name any of my great-grandparents. And my first reaction was I was embarrassed because I thought that's pretty pathetic. And my second reaction was I was kind of pissed off because I thought, if I can't name any of my parents' grandparents' names, then the odds are pretty good that my kids' grandkids won't either know my name. And what struck me is that the reality is that unless you do something really, really good or really, really bad, in just 3 generations, even your family will forget you. And
Yeah.
so it became clear to me that I had to do something very intentional to change that, to break that chain of patheticness. And so I became really clear on, well, what do I want to have happen in the future, and how can I ensure that my values are passed multi-generationally, not just to my kids and my grandkids and then be forgotten.
Yes. Now, one way you've done that is writing of books. Um, Talk a little bit about, the inspiration behind, I think you're at 5 books now. You don't have to necessarily go through all 5, but talk a little bit about the inspiration. What about each of those books is something you want to pass on to that next generation?
Yeah. So the idea behind the books was the first one, the same friend that had the T-shirt with the goals printed backwards. He also subsequently wrote a book. I said, well, gosh, if Phil can do it, I can do it too. So that's what led to Your Life by Design. But I think
Okay.
each of my books have really been sparked by a personal passion or interest. And so Your Life by Design was really just my desire to make sure that the goal setting process that worked well for me was written down for my kids and grandkids. So it literally is just for my family, and if other people get benefit from it, I'm super grateful for that. Thank you. And then
Yeah.
the second book, Family First, was me literally being in front of another therapist, and he said, Curtis, what's most important to you? And I said, well, it's my faith and my wife and being a good father. And then he said, well, tell me all about everything that's going on in your life. And I talked about work, work, and work. And he said, you realize that you said this is important, but this is all you're talking about? And I said, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'm turning into my father. And
Mm.
so the next 2 years were literally spent with me and my therapist and the editor of that book sitting in during the counseling sessions, writing down all the horrible things that I was doing wrong and my ongoing efforts to be a better husband and father and Christian. And so, again, that was the thesis. Just something inspired me, and I said, man, I need to capture this, not just as a reminder for myself, but also hopefully something to share with kids and grandkids and other folks if they find value as well, hopefully.
Amazing. Now, one thing that I think is so hard to do as a balancing act is all things well. And I think, something in today's culture people talk about is work life balance. And in my opinion, the idea, if you're saying balance, is I'm going to spend equal amounts of time doing each activity, we probably will never achieve balance, or we'll probably just never achieve anything great in any one of the 4 categories. However, if the idea of balance is the amount of energy and effort you put into the activity when you're doing each activity, I think you can achieve balance. So, talk a little bit about for you and the phase of life that you're in, where you're running immensely successful business. You and your wife have been married for a long time. Kids are getting older, which means there's just more, things and activities to be a part of. Talk about how you're kind of, raising yourself in all those areas.
And that's such an important question. And I think of it not only in the way that you so eloquently explained balance, but I also think of it as integration. And so
Mm,
more and more today, I'm trying to find out how can I take those things that I love to do, that give me energy and provide never-ending opportunities for growth, and integrate them. And I
yeah.
think a perfect example is this whole longevity conversation that we've embraced in a really, really big way. And how can I integrate this, something that I'm passionate about, also in my business so that they complement each other. And so more and more I'm looking for ways to integrate. And so if it's ways for my wife and I to learn new things together, to be growing together, I think that's super important. And then personally, from an exercise perspective, I'm so thrilled that my kids are, starting to enjoy the mountain biking and the cycling, and so to be able to integrate that exercise and time with kids is really, really powerful. So for me, it's more and more about integration as opposed to, really having silos work separate from all the other things that we hold important in our lives.
Now, Curtis, that is something that you had a very early is probably a relative term, but you had a realization of this in your strategic coaching group, and that was most people don't get burned out doing something they love. They get burned out doing all of the things that you have to do in pursuit of the one thing that you love. And so what you realized was, I don't necessarily love this, and this about financial planning, but I love connecting people. And if I can just be introducing and connecting people, well, that would be fulfilling for me, and it's also going to help others. So I guess talk a little bit about how that realization came to be, and two, starting from the beginning of not really knowing anyone in California to growing the network, really what that's shifted to, because you're not just connecting a person that's eating Chipotle with another person that's eating Chipotle. You're connecting very important people that are doing amazing things in the world.
For sure. And you hit on probably the fundamental concept that I love sharing with my kids and everybody that I care about, and that's the idea of becoming clear as soon as possible about what your unique ability is. And so in Strategic Coach, the unique ability concept is, if we can identify those activities that we love to do, that give us energy and provide never-ending opportunities for growth, we're going to have more fun doing that than other things. And as a byproduct, we're going to be more successful doing those activities than we otherwise would be. And so about 10 years into the business, I went through the unique ability exercise with Strategic Coach, and I assumed that my unique ability would be something related to financial planning. And while it was clear from all the analysis that I was, very, very good at the financial planning, it wasn't my true passion. And my true passion was instead more around the lines of meeting, befriending, and connecting superstars for mutual benefit. And so I thought, well, gosh, I better think about how to integrate that more and more into my business. And the point that they made at Strategic Coach is that if you can get clear on your unique ability, not only are you going to have more fun, but if you can set up your environment so you're able to spend at least 50% of your time in your unique ability, over time, that's what leads to genius level results. And so I thought, well, how can I set up more and more of my time in my unique ability? And I thought, well, gosh, I love doing events. Let's start doing these dinner parties, bringing together a carefully curated group of folks. And so we did our first one back in 2001, and it went really, really well. So we did another one, and it went really, really well. And so we went from doing on average one event a month pre-COVID, and so we've done hundreds and hundreds of these events, to post-COVID, with such an interest in people connecting more, we do an event on average one every week. So we had 2 events last week. I've got another event tomorrow night. And so, yeah, it's just really, really wonderful. And again, because it's an area of passion, we've built this brand of really having an incredible community of people where people are like, hey, how do I get invited to one of your dinners? Because they're so cool. And so it's been a fun way to integrate my personal passion with business that's had a net win on both accounts.
Now, to say they are so cool, I have never personally attended, but I've heard certain stories. One of them that I have heard, and you can confirm or deny, that is people are told, hey, bring a packed suitcase, and at the end of the night, we are going to pull names out of a hat, and you are going to hop on a plane to a predetermined destination, and you'll take your suitcase with. So talk a little bit about the event themselves. It's not just, once again, having dinner at Chipotle. There's some other exciting things that go along with it.
Yeah, so I think the goal is, how do you do something unique that's really more of an experience rather than just something somebody could otherwise do on their own? So we have everything from a venue that's known as the Secret Table in Beverly Hills, where people who've lived in Beverly Hills their whole lives don't even know that this eating establishment exists in the basement underneath the cheese store of Beverly Hills, of all places. So we do lots and lots of events there, to the more extravagant things like the suitcase party. And the idea there is you and your wife pack your bags for the weekend, and you come to this private hangar at the airport, and you're greeted by a stewardess who takes your bags and gives you a claim check, and you walk the step and repeat into this beautifully decorated hangar where there's great food, great drinks, great music. And last time we did it at 8 o'clock, it was Miss California who clinked her champagne glass and cued the band to stop playing and cued the jet to fire up its engines. And she literally started spinning this tumbler because we'd put everybody's name in the tumbler. And she pulled a name, and for the next one, hopefully it's you. But yeah, you'd have 2 minutes to grab your date and your bags and up to 6 of your friends, because you're getting in that jet and you're going to Napa for the weekend. And then as we're toasting you and your friends in the jet bon voyage, we notice a second jet pulls up. And we pull another name, and they're leaving the jet to Vegas. And then a helicopter lands, and we pull another name, and they're going out to Palm Springs for the weekend. And then a Rolls Royce pulls up, and we pull another name, and they're going to Laguna Beach for the weekend. So at our last event, 22 of our guests left in a different mode of transportation than they arrived. And we do all these events for amazing childhood charities for the less fortunate. So again, it's a way to integrate doing something super, super fun, bringing together an awesome group of people, and giving back to the community.
I love that. Now, as you mentioned, the frequency of events, dinner events, has started to increase, and part of that was due to this longevity factor that you've become enamored with. Not that it wasn't important to you before, but it's definitely grown with importance. And if I understand correctly, it comes from strategic group again, where people are talking about longevity, and you go to an event where you have to put your name and then the age in which you would like to live to. So talk about how it kind of came up in conversation, and then the event and what you're now doing with that.
For sure. So Peter Diamandis, the founder of X Prize, and I have been in the Strategic Coach program together for many years. And 2.5 years ago, he said he was going to do a longevity conference. And I thought, well, that'd be cool. Sign me up. And so it was Peter Diamandis, Tony Robbins, and David Sinclair from the Harvard Longevity Institute. And they basically said, if you can just live 10 more years, so many of the things that can kill us today, they're going to have figured out. And the crazy thing about the conference is when you registered, you had to say not only what name you wanted on your name badge, but also to what age you expected to live. So imagine being in this room of 400 longevity folks, and they're all walking around with their life expectancy on their name badge, and you introduce yourself to the Stanford longevity professor, and he's planning on living to 150. And then you meet this guy in his 70s who's planning on 156. And then Tony Robbins says 200, and Peter Diamandis says 200 plus. And I'm blown away by all these crazy numbers that people are putting out there. And if I was to ask you, to what age do you think you might be able to live? What age would you guess? What would you put on your name badge?
So the number that I have written in my vision that I wrote when I was 21 was 105 years old, because I said I was at 20% of my life. But after I started to hear you, I was like, man, I'm thinking too small. 105, like I gotta go 155 now.
So what's so interesting, and what they explained, is that when most people are asked to what age you think you'll be able to live, the brain works linearly. So we think, well, my grandparents made it to this age, and my parents lived a little bit longer than that, and hopefully I'll live a little bit longer than that. So most people would say, 85, 95, 105, and it makes sense, because that's how our brain works, linearly. But if you think about it, is technology advancing linearly, or is technology advancing exponentially? And we know technology is advancing exponentially, but our brains can't fathom the implications of an exponentially accelerating life expectancy. And so the consensus at the end of the conference wasn't necessarily that everyone was going to live to 150 or 200, but because there are so many advances that are happening seemingly before our eyes every other week, we do need to plan on the possibility of living longer than we previously imagined. And so the consensus was, everybody who's in good health today, who's planning on living at least an extra 10 years, because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know the impact of AI on drug discovery. We don't know what other amazing breakthroughs, right around the corner. We all need to plan on the possibility of an extra vital, healthy, impactful 22 years. And I just thought, like, holy smokes, if I need to plan on the possibility of living 22 years longer than I previously expected, that there's some pretty significant implications there. And if my clients are potentially living 22 years longer than they were planning, there's some big implications there. So I had 3 epiphanies. And the first epiphany was that nobody wants to be really, really old and sick. And so I realized it was time for me to begin my own longevity journey. And so I started doing the quarterly blood tests, which informed the supplement that I take. I started, doing the DEXA scan, the Prolon, the Prenuvo. As you might see by the color of my tongue, I do methylene blue, which is an amazing cognitive boost and mitochondrial enhancer. And so what's really inspiring is that over the last 2 years, since starting all these longevity changes in my life, all of my biomarkers are now way better today than they were just 2 years ago. And I did my blood test recently with 100, and it shows that my biological age is 11.2 years younger than my chronological age. And so it just has given me a tremendous amount of conviction that, in fact, we do have a lot of influence over how long we might live. And so I've doubled down on all of these longevity initiatives to take advantage of everything, to give myself every opportunity to live as long as possible. So that was the first epiphany. No one wants to be really, really old and sick. The second epiphany was nobody wants to be really, really old and lonely. And I just thought about my own mother-in-law, who's 91, living in Sacramento in the same house she's lived in for 60 years. But all of her family have moved away. And all of her friends have passed away. And she's desperately lonely, but she refuses to move. And it's this really sad situation, but there's nothing we can do about it. And it just made me realize that I don't want to end up like that. And it became clear that it's incumbent upon us, even now, to be very intentional about creating a community of people who you'd want to spend more and more time with. And so I just thought, what are the mindsets of those people I'd want to spend more time with? So I made a list of 8 of these mindsets, and I started sharing them with friends, and everyone's like, yeah, I want to be part of that. And so I thought, well, let's do a longevity dinner. And it was immediately oversubscribed, so we did another one, and it was immediately oversubscribed. And by the end of 2023, we'd had over 200 people come to our longevity dinners, and we thought, well, gosh, maybe we're onto something. So we thought we should come up with a name, and we thought, well, if people are potentially living not just to 105, but to 125, 127, it's kind of silly to retire at 65. So we call our longevity community the Anti-Retirement Club. And we went from doing 1 event a month to 2 to 3 longevity events every month, where we bring in MDs, PhDs, and longevity tech CEOs. And we went from 100 members at the end of 2023 to over 1,000 members at the end of last year. And year to date, we're over 2,000 members. And what we've been hearing is that people want even more because they do, the Oura Ring or the Whoop or the Apple Watch. And they get all this data, but they don't know what to do with it. And so what we're really excited about is we're launching right now what we call longevity forums. And the idea is we're putting together groups of 12 to 14 peers who are curious about this longevity thing, and they want to take their longevity game to the next level. And so we have everybody benchmark their biomarkers with that 100 app, the blood test that I just referred to. And with that, we can get a sense for how many extra years they probably, in fact, have. And then we identify, well, what do you want to do with those extra years? What kind of impact, what purpose do you want to have with those extra years? And then we pair them with a professional facilitator who comes alongside everybody to put together their own individual plan and encourage them month by month in making that progress. And then because we've built this amazing network of MDs and PhDs as experts, whatever each longevity forum wants to go deep in, whether it's sleep or peptides or nutrition or whatever, we give them access to these experts so that they can go as deep as they want to in whatever topics of longevity that they're most curious about. And so our vision is, what if together, by partnering with folks like you, we're able to create over time this community of 10,000 heart-centered leaders who, by leveraging all these longevity breakthroughs, are able to find an extra 22 years. Think about the cumulative impact of 10,000 people with an extra 22 years. That's 220,000 new years of learning together, growing together, and making the world a better place together. And that just gives us really, really exciting. So as you can imagine, we want to grow this community as much as we possibly can. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this with friends like you. But then there was that third epiphany that I had after the longevity conference, and that's that we don't want to be old and sick. We don't want to be old and lonely, but neither do we want to be really, really old and broke. And so it just became clear to me that the work that we do in financial planning is all the more important, because it'd be really, really horrible to be really, really old and healthy and really, really old and surrounded by friends, but not to have the resources to make the most of it. And what's incredible is Northwestern Mutual has these unbelievable products that are perfectly positioned. In fact, they perform even better the longer that you live. And so it's been exciting to be able to share that with our clients as well.
Absolutely. So as you look at, this longevity piece and you reconfigure your goals, what have you kind of come up with, or what impactful things have now entered in your sphere of, man, if I get another 22 years or more, right, God willing, what new things have you really become passionate about outside of helping other people see that? Or are there anything specific, for you, your family, the way when you wrote your first T-shirt that's different now than when you first wrote it?
Well, I think one of the things you and I share is a really deep conviction that we're blessed to be a blessing. And so the opportunity to give back and make the world a better place is the core of everything that we do. And so foundationally, as part of our longevity forum, is this give back idea. And so what I'm super excited about is not only helping 10,000 people find an extra 22 years for an extra 220,000 years of impact. For every year that our members reduce their biological age, we are going to help someone less fortunate save 10 more years in longevity. And it's super easy to do this with, providing the nutritional supplements for orphans in Africa, or malaria tents to prevent the mosquitoes from biting them at night. So what really gets me excited is not only the vision for a 220,000 year impact for our community, but a 2.2 million year impact for all those that we're going to be able to help around the world.
That's amazing. Now, are there strategic nonprofits or organizations you've partnered with? Have you started your own? I know you're very charitable to schools and churches in the area, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I am not I'm not uniquely able to build and run nonprofits. So we partner with a number of amazing organizations, and we're doing a really big event next month with Convoy of Hope that has an incredible impact around the world, coming alongside individuals that if you just give them a helping hand, they're able to provide for themselves very, very efficiently. And then another one is Charity Water. we take for granted access to clean drinking water here in the United States, and it's relatively very inexpensive to provide, a well in Africa or Asia, where it literally can be the difference between life and death for an entire community. So yeah, we love Convoy of Hope and Charity Water for sure.
Amazing. Now, to get to where you're at today, it's taken a lot of connections. It's taken a lot of time, energy, and effort. As you rewind the clock in your, career, were there one or two, pivotal strategic relationships that ended up opening up a lot of doors for you? Are there, certain ones that when you reflect back on it, you go, man, thank goodness I met that person, was able to befriend them because of them, the spider web has grown even that much bigger.
Yeah, for sure. Two folks come to mind immediately. When I moved to Los Angeles and I didn't know anybody, I kind of clung to those connections that I had, and one was the University of Kansas. And I reached out to find out about the local alumni association, and they connected me with somebody who was stepping down from being the president of the Los Angeles KU Alumni Association, and he said, "Hey, do you want to take over?" And I said, "Yeah, for sure." And so the very first KU event we did in LA, this incredibly enthusiastic Jayhawk Dana Anderson. There's a number of buildings at KU named after Dana and Sue Anderson and their son Justin. And he took me under his wing, and he said, I don't know how you're going to survive. The financial planning world is really, really hard for anyone, let alone somebody right out of school, let alone someone who doesn't know anybody. So Dana Anderson modeled success for me in so many ways, because I'd never had anyone really who had built a successful business that was leading, an extraordinary life. And so he lived in this neighborhood called Bel Air Crest, and I thought, gosh, one day if only I could live, in Bel Air Crest. And he was a member of Bel Air Country Club. And growing up in Atchison, there really weren't, any fancy country clubs. And I said, wow, if only one day I could be a member of Bel Air Country Club. And through Dana opening doors, I've been a member at Bel Air Country Club since 1999, and I've lived in Bel Air Crest since 2001, and we've raised our kids here, and now they're graduating and off to college. So Dana's been someone who's just had an incredible impact in my life. And then Strategic Coach, the Strategic Coach program, that lifetime growth program for entrepreneurs, founded and run to this day by Dan Sullivan. I've been in Strategic Coach for over 25 years now. It's really provided me the thinking tools to not only think bigger about what's possible, but also to put me in a community of other entrepreneurs who challenge each other to 10x everything that's most meaningful in our lives. And that's not just the money, but it's the time, the relationships, the impact. So I can't say enough about Strategic Coach as a program for any entrepreneur out there.
I love it. Well, I'll end with this. You and I, I would love to spend days talking, but we'll end with this. A relationship that you had, a friend of yours had a brother that ended up getting diagnosed with ALS, and through the connection, you ended up getting to spend time together, but you had a very important moment happen when you attended the funeral. So talk a little bit about that and that driving force for you and just how you're living your life today.
Oh, thank you. That's a great way to finish. So one of my buddies here in Bel Air Crest had a younger brother who was a fire captain here in Los Angeles, so literally a hero to all of us. And his brother, at the prime of his career, was diagnosed with ALS. So we knew he was going to die. We just didn't know how long he had. And so over the course of the 5 years, I just witnessed his gradual decline. And when he passed, I just said to my buddy, hey, I feel like I've lived through this with your brother. Would you mind if I went to his funeral to support you? And he said, we'd love to have you come. And so I go to this funeral, and when you have 5 years to plan your funeral, it's amazing. And so everything from the bagpiper playing the moment you walk in the doors, to the Bible verses, to the worship music. The 2 guys that gave the eulogy were asked 2 years before he died, would you speak at my funeral? So everything was just so perfectly choreographed and orchestrated to have an immense impact on everybody there, that I just walked away from that funeral stunned by how much it meant to me. And I'd never even met him in real life before. And so I just thought, I wanted to have a funeral that was that amazing. And so all day long I'm thinking, that was such a great funeral. I want to have a great funeral. And so I go to bed that night thinking that thought, and I wake up at 3 a.m. thinking, why not plan it now? So from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. I write down every detail of my funeral, and I wake up the next morning so excited about how amazing my funeral is going to be. And all day long I'm thinking, I can't wait for my funeral. I'm going to have an amazing funeral. It's going to be the best. And all day long I'm thinking that. And as I go to bed that night, I have another thought, and that was, while it was so wonderful to have been able to go to Neil's funeral, most funerals today aren't called funerals. They're called celebrations of life, and his was called a celebration of life. And while I was so grateful to have gone to his celebration of life after he died, the question struck me, why did we wait until we're dead to have our first celebration of life? And so I'm thinking about that as I go to bed, and I wake up again at 3 a.m. thinking, I'm not going to wait till I die. And so from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. I write down every single detail of the party that I want to have while I'm still alive. And so we are in this moment working on scheduling my first celebration of life, because I don't want to wait till I'm dead to bring together everybody that I love, because we tend to live very siloed lives, such that our work friends know each other, our college friends know each other, our church friends know each other, but they don't often know each other. And so why do we wait till we die to bring the people that we love the most together? And so my vision is, on every 5th major birthday, I'm going to do a celebration of life, not celebrating me, but celebrating all the people that I love, and making sure that they know each other, and hopefully get to build great relationships together way before the day that I die, 75 years from now when I'm 132.
I love it. Well, Curtis, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing your journey and your pivotal moments and all the amazing things you've done, all the amazing things you're going to continue to do. And you just got to promise me, 4 years from now, we'll probably be doing this again, talking about not 22 extra years, but 42 extra years, and all the amazing things you're doing. So thanks so much.
It's been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.